Hey guys, my name's Breana Bauman. I'm a Suzuki kid, as you can see in this fun little picture of me from when I was 5. And I'm a Suzuki instructor in the Boston area. I knew very early on, when I was about 7 years old, that I wanted to be a professional musician. And so my talk is about discovering that interest and helping others to find it in themselves. I know part of it was just the Suzuki environment, singing on the bus with the shared repertoire with my friends, going to camps like Blue Lake, having the whole family involved, and all musician parents, which most people are very intrigued to learn because they assume that professional musicians are all from professional musician families. So when I was looking at grad schools after doing a performance degree at Oberlin Conservatory, I was intrigued by the program at Cleveland Institute of Music, where I majored in violin performance and Suzuki pedagogy. I wanted to sort of get back to my roots in the same way that people do genealogy. I wanted to understand if Suzuki was a primary factor in my love of music. And then that ended up becoming my purpose in life, to share my enthusiasm for music with the next generation and to help cultivate that in them and their families. And when I think about the positive environment aspect of Suzuki, I think about the words we use, and I think about how we challenge the kids we work with. I think the words we choose, how the language we work with absolutely affects our relationships and our practice. If you're anything like me or the parents in my studio, the desired outcome of your Suzuki lessons is a child who is intrinsically motivated to practice, who's always up for a challenge, who makes regular progress in a very sort of superficial, this song, this song, this song way. But in all seriousness, a child whose life is enriched by the music in their lives. Now that child isn't playing for their parents or for the benefit of their teachers or for their peers, but they're playing for their pleasure, for themselves. That child knows the other F word, failure, and yet they're resilient to it. They've received the gift of imperfection, as Breana Brown calls it, and they know they're not inadequate because they're imperfect. This child is not a perfectionist, yet they strive for excellence in all areas of their life because they've cultivated it. When I do my teaching, there are a few words that I try to avoid, and there are words that I try to use more often because I believe they affect how the kids perceive my expectations. My no words are perfect, best, we're done, and let's fix that. Instead of fix that, I say, let's improve on that, or how can we improve on that part of the song or of your playing? Instead of saying that was perfect and leaving them with the idea that they have to be perfect or that tomorrow can't possibly be better, I choose to use the word excellent. That was an excellent example of X, Y, and Z. That was much better. It was better because of this specific thing. Or let's move on to a different thing because you've improved whatever we were working on, rather than it was the best and it's fixed and it's no longer broken, etc. So here's my challenge to you. Think about your last practice session or your lesson with your students. What words did you choose to use? Now pay attention this week too to what you say without judgment. Because, point in fact, I prefer you to be imperfect. It's more authentic. And your kids do too. They can absolutely spot people who are being inauthentic. And they don't buy anymore. They don't bite. They don't subscribe. I think perfect as a word is overused in our society. It's an overused term for an imaginary ideal. People who are perfectionists seek approval and validation of their worthiness by making zero mistakes. And I think they're likely very unhappy. I think they're afraid of judgment, of not measuring up. They doubt themselves and they fear taking risks, being vulnerable, which is a shame because ultimately we all need to be vulnerable to be creative and to make authentic art that is an expression of our humanity. Whereas I think people who pursue excellence, they're willing to be wrong, to experiment and be creative, to trust their innate goodness. My experience with people who seek excellence is that they are very powerful, that their art actually really touches our souls. They often are very spontaneous personalities. They're very joyful. They approach life with a growth mindset. They're always interested in learning more. And I think the biggest thing for me is that it's very childlike to seek excellence, to all of these different descriptors, to be experimenting. And since we're working with children, why not capitalize on that idea, right? Why not grow that thing that they already do? Since we're talking about excellence, I want to address the elephant in the room, the Tiger Mom. When that book came out, I remember everyone freaking out. I know I freaked out. If you didn't freak out, I don't know why you didn't. Everyone in my studio knows that I have very high expectations of my students for excellence. I once had an elementary school principal as a parent in my class, and at a parent-teacher conference, she praised my high expectations of even the tiniest little 3-year-olds in my studio. She said, because I believed in them, they grew quickly into strong players. No one else in their lives had any expectations for them, but because I saw their potential, it was empowering for them. They believed they could do the thing, and then they did. Having high expectations, unfortunately, gets a bad rep. But what if it's the thing that challenges your child to wake up early to practice? I love the way Suzuki's organized with graded repertoire, because the promise of what you'll learn next, if you practice intelligently, is right there on the recording. It's happening at the group class. It's at the solo recitals, the group performances, as are reminders of how far you've come, because you see the previous songs and you see the younger students struggling, right? And so you know what's going to happen. Being diligently clear about practice for your students, for your children, creates motivation. It definitely does in my studio. And practice charts, those are just the tip of the iceberg, right? I hope you have those, because they can be very clear for kids to see how much they need to get done. The repetition part, though, is also key to learning new skills, and when necessary, replacing poorly learned habits. I have a game I use with my students, has 3 levels. It's called effective practice. Level 1, if you get it right, you get a point, meaning you hit whatever the one focus is for that thing you're practicing. If you get it right, you get a point. We're going to aim for 3 just for starters. If you get it wrong, nothing happens, but you try again until you get that 3rd point, right? And don't freak out about it if they make a mistake. Just say, okay, let's try again. Just be very calm and normal about it. Level 2, if you get it right, you get a point. If you get it right, you get a point. You get it wrong, you lose a point, and you replace it with the correct repetition. Now, the idea of replacing something that was a little broken or that wasn't working the way it was supposed to, maybe not broken, but not working the way it was supposed to, is something they understand, right? You buy a toy and it doesn't work, or you buy a coat and it has a hole in it for some reason for poor manufacturing. You just replace it. And that's an example of what I'm talking about with the language you choose to use with your students. Level 3 is the hardest level, and I usually tease them and I say, I don't know if a book 1 student can do this. I mean, it's kind of hard, maybe when you're in book 4. And of course that becomes the incentive, right? And so level 3 is getting it right 3 times in a row. And then it's recital worthy. That's why I tell them it's performance ready. So the progression of repertoire, the regularly setting very clear expectations and goals, and also the words you choose, those are the things I want you to leave this talk thinking about. I'm hoping it creates a way of life, of thinking, of interacting with your children and community and your partners that's healthy and positive. encourage you to look at it this week, to reflect about the words you're choosing, and see if it improves your life over time. See if it improves your relationships. Because what you're doing is very worthwhile. This commitment you have to bringing music to your life, it's a very honorable one, and I applaud you for it. And keep being authentic. Thanks for your time.